Since conflict management is such an important communication skill, I decided to discuss it separately from the other types of communication, and then we'll go on to the other topics about managing volunteers. Our final module is program management skills. Most people are uncomfortable when they're involved in conflict. It helps a lot to understand what causes the conflict and then how people react to it and how you can help yourself and others work through a conflict situation.
Good. I'd like to feel more comfortable about it.
So how would you define conflict?
Well, I think conflict is when two or more people have, or even believe they have, different ideas or different goals.
Or opposing values or needs. Conflict can be caused by competition or by authority issues or even personal viewpoints.
Oh, like the contradictory values of people from different generations?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. I also think conflict involves some type of confrontation. For example, if someone feels their way of acting or thinking is threatened by another person, they'll want to do something about it.
It's important to realize that we respond to conflicts based on our perception of the situation, not necessarily to an objective review of the facts. And our perceptions are influenced by our life experiences, our culture, our values, our beliefs, so our reaction is also influenced by those factors.
So then I should expect that people involved in conflict will react differently.
Yep, and that response is called their conflict management style. So before we talk more about that, I need to remind you that as a program coordinator, you may be involved in a conflict situation personally, with a volunteer or even with another staff member. But you may also need to mediate conflict between or among volunteers. If you can identify the styles that other people engage in, you have a better chance of responding effectively. You might also use a variety of approaches yourself, depending on the people and the situation you're in. So how would you say you respond to conflict?
I guess it depends on the situation, but I prefer to find some way to meet the needs of everyone involved.
So that means your style of conflict management is collaborative. A similar style to collaborative is compromising. Compromising is when the individual tries to find a solution that partially satisfies everyone. Sometimes it ends up with no one being satisfied.
And I think someone with an accommodating style also tries to work with others to solve a conflict. But I know people who try to meet the needs of others at the expense of their own needs.
Some people have conflict management styles that don't even consider the other person in the conflict. The competitive management styles, when a person takes a stand and demands to get what they want.
I'd like to add avoidance to that list. I know some people who avoid conflict at any price. And that's not good because a small problem that could have been easily solved could spiral out of control.
Yep, when you're in a conflict, you need to think about the type of management style you're using. Is it one that helps to resolve the conflict or does it make it worse? So to learn about the conflict management process, let's use an example. Chris and Jim are arguing about how to organize the recognition night agenda. So first, present the conflict as a mutual problem to be solved through discussion. Present your perception of the problem. Use a calm, assertive approach. You can do this by using I statements to describe your feelings. Avoid you statements.
I feel frustrated that we can't come up with a mutual vision for the event. I'd like to eliminate some repetition and add more networking time.
I don't understand why we need to change it. We've done the same thing for the past 5 years and everybody's liked it fine.
So notice how Chris and Jim used I statements. If they were to use you statements, the conversation would have gone something like this.
You aren't listening to anything I have to say.
Just because you're new doesn't mean you have to come in and change things.
Ooh, I think if you statements were used, the situation could get ugly fast.
Indeed. So next, let's talk about everyone's underlying interests, needs, and concerns. Use active listening skills so that you hear and understand the other person's positions and perceptions. Try to restate and paraphrase, summarize what the other person is saying.
So Jim, you think the agenda should stay the same because everybody is used to the event going a specific way?
And you want to change the agenda so we can eliminate some repetitive parts and let people spend more time together.
During this step of the process, the conflict needs to be discussed in objective terms. Depending on the situation, talk about how it affects work performance or harms services to your clients, unsettles other volunteers, or even obstructs progress on a project. Focus on work issues. Try to leave the personalities out of the discussion. Next, agree to the problem. And this may not be easy if different fundamental needs and interests and goals cause people to perceive a situation differently. You'll need to agree about the problems that you're trying to solve before you'll find a mutually acceptable solution.
I think we are both concerned about recognition night running smoothly and being fun. We just have different ideas about how to accomplish that.
You know, I think you're right. The issue is how to merge our ideas for the event.
And then you can brainstorm solutions. Everyone has to have input so they feel satisfied with the outcome. Brainstorming requires all participants to listen to and consider other people's ideas without criticism or judgment.
For the event to run smoothly, we need an agenda.
Right. We can use the agenda from last year as a template and think about changing just a few items.
Maybe before we try new things, we should ask what other people want to do.
I can put together an outline with ideas for new activities. I can even explain how the activities would alter or fit last year's agenda.
I can help you brainstorm ideas. Then we can send an email survey to folks to see what they prefer.
Once you have your solutions, negotiate what you'll do to resolve the situation. And if there doesn't appear to be a clear solution, discuss the advantages and disadvantages of each proposal. Remind those involved that you're working toward a common goal and everyone may need to compromise.
Let's start by thinking about new activities for the event. I would really like to contribute some ideas.
Of course, we could see how they would fit into the agenda. I admit we could make a few changes.
And then we can develop our survey to see what the group wants to do.
So let's review some conflict management styles. Let's say you're talking with a volunteer about how he needs to record all of his hours. The volunteer tells you he hasn't ever logged his hours before and he doesn't intend to start. What type of conflict management style is this volunteer displaying?
Boy, definitely competitive. He's taking a firm stand about what he wants, or in this case, doesn't want.
So what do you say you're due in this situation?
I think I need to explain why he should record his hours. Not only is it a state law for agencies with volunteers, but it also provides us with great information for promoting our program to community leaders.
Here's another scenario. You arrange a meeting with two volunteers who are having difficulty working together, and you plan to use the conflict management process to help them resolve the issue. But when the day comes, only one of the volunteers shows up. What kind of conflict management style is that?
That sounds like avoidance. The person wants to avoid the conflict entirely.
And how would you resolve this situation?
I think I'd call the volunteer who didn't show up and suggest that we meet for coffee. Then I can explain the conflict management process and help them feel comfortable with how the meeting would proceed.
By George, I think you've got it. The next presentation in the Managing Volunteer Support is supporting.
Like giving positive feedback?
Exactly.